Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Political Hitman. I'm Howie Silberger, your political hitman, right here on Israel News Talk Radio. Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining me. The program is live, which means you could join me in the chat room at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, where the conversation is always fun and exciting, extremely exciting. IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Of course, you could call in. I will take your calls for the duration of the show. Numbers to call in North America, 301-768-4841. In Israel, the number is 0265-00151. Today marks the 25th anniversary of Holocaust Remembrance, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This is the day that United Nations and Germany, essentially, decided that they were going to remember the Holocaust, the murder of Jews, the annihilation of the European Jewish community, and other Holocausts in the world. It's a very secular event. The event is marked by Germany inviting people who survived the Holocaust to come and speak at their parliament. And the question I want to ask today, and the question I want to examine today, is: are we remembering the Holocaust in the right way? Is this the way we've been remembering the Holocaust, the way we've been commemorating the Holocaust? Has that done a service or a disservice to the world community, to the Jewish community, to everyone? And it's a question I've asked for many, many years. I've asked on the show for many years, and I've asked in general for many years. And I will say, and I'll tell you this before we go to break, I will say I don't think that the way we've commemorated the Holocaust has been appropriate, has been good for the Jewish people, and has been good for the world community. I'll tell you why when we come back. I'm Howie Silberger. This is Political Hitman right here on Israel News Talk Radio. Feel free to call in. You can go to the website, IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, and join me in the chat room.
The return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago and is coming true today. Shalom. Join me, Josh Wander, on Israel Unplugged. Listen in as we delve into the spiritual and physical aspects of the Jewish return to Zion. We'll discuss the biblically mandated, historic, and of course practical understandings of this incredible transition from exile to redemption. That's Israel Unplugged, every Monday on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Political Hitman. I'm Howie Silberger, your political hitman, right here on Israel News Talk Radio. Feel free to join me in the chat room at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, where the chat is always fun and the conversation is always stimulating. You could call in. The show is live. You could call in. In North America, 301-768-4841. In Israel, the number is 0265-00151. And that's the way you could get in on the conversation here on Political Hitman on Israel News Talk Radio. Now, 25 years ago in 1996, survivors of the Nazi regime and world leaders were first invited to address the German Bundestag on January 27th. January 27th, of course, is the date of the liberation of Auschwitz. Now, the reason they were invited to go and speak in front of the Bundestag is Germany finally decided 25 years ago to commemorate the Holocaust, along with the United Nations. Before that, there was no real official commemoration of the Holocaust internationally. We had Yom HaShoah, where Jews commemorated the Holocaust, which is important. But the international community decided to choose a different date to commemorate the Holocaust. And January 27th, the liberation of Auschwitz, was the date that they chose. Now, genocide is the appropriate word to describe the systematic annihilation of 6 million Jews. I think there were more than 6 million, but the official number is around 6 million Jews between 1939 and 1945. Clearly, the word doesn't go far enough. In Israel, they use the word Shoah, which means catastrophe or great misfortune. It's used to describe the events outside of the Jewish state. This crime against humanity is called the Holocaust, which is derived from the Greek word for sacrificially burned. The attempt to adequately put this betrayal of human perpetrated by the Germans into words will always be a challenge. This is also reflected in the official designation of the Day of Remembrance for the victims of National Socialism, which was introduced by then German President Roman Herzog in 1996. At the launch, President Herzog said that the victims of the Holocaust would have been too narrow a term, as Nazi racial policies affected more people than just the Jews. The chosen date was January 27th, the day the Nazi extermination camp Auschwitz was liberated by Soviet soldiers in 1945. So, even the commemoration done internationally, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, was not specifically set up to remember the Jews of the Holocaust. It was set up to remember the Jews and other victims of the Holocaust. So, once again, the victims of the Holocaust, the major victims of the Holocaust, the targets of Nazism, the Jews, were once again pushed aside and told, all right, we're going to remember you, but we're going to remember everybody else too. The majority of the people killed in the Holocaust were, of course, Jews. And bulking Jews in with everybody else is kind of insulting, if you ask me. You should have a remembrance for the third of the Jewish community that was wiped out by the Nazis. That was their goal, to wipe out the entire Jewish community. They wiped out a third of the Jewish community. And then you could have another commemoration day for everybody else. And I'm not saying we should separate the Jews from everybody else because Jews are better than everyone else. I'm not saying we should separate the Jews from everyone else because the Jews are more important than anybody else. No, that's not true at all. But we should separate the Jews from everyone else in the commemoration of Nazism and the destruction of the Jewish people in Nazism. We should separate it for the simple reason. There's two reasons, actually. The first reason is so that Jew haters who use the fact that there were other people killed that weren't Jews in Nazism as a weapon against the Jewish people. You're crybabies, we hear Jew haters say all the time. You're crybabies. All you do is cry about the Holocaust. You know, Jews weren't the only people who killed in the Holocaust. So to highlight just the Jewish aspect of the Holocaust, the fact that the Nazis targeted the Jewish people, the Nazis decided that the Jewish people were the people they wanted to wipe off the face of the earth, in order to actually drive home the point that Jews were the actual target of the Holocaust. Other people kind of fell into the Nazi trap, but Jews were the target. To drive home that point, there's the commemoration, the international commemoration, should be a commemoration for the Jewish people. To say, yes, we recognize that Nazism was designed to destroy the Jewish people, that the death factories built by the Nazis were built to destroy the Jewish people, that the gas chambers were built to destroy the Jewish people, that the crematorias were built to burn the bodies of the Jews that we gassed. Now, did they discriminate against blacks and gays and all the other people? Of course they did. And that should be a separate day of condemnation of discrimination during the Holocaust of other people. But we have to recognize that the Holocaust itself was not just a genocide because somebody wanted to take over land and get rid of the people who live in the land. It wasn't just a mass murder during a war, that there was a war and people got killed in the war. This was a concerted effort to murder the Jewish people. This was a concerted effort, a planned effort to kill the Jews. That was the Holocaust. That was the sole purpose of the Holocaust, period. And not only the Jews in Germany, and not only the Jews in Europe, but the Jews around the world. Death camps were set up, killing factories, efficient killing factories were set up specifically to murder the Jewish people. And until we're clear on that, these International Holocaust Remembrance Days are totally pointless. When you lump in everybody else into the Jewish factor and you're commemorating everybody together, you are diminishing the actual point of the Holocaust. And to me, that's unacceptable. Now, the second reason that we should not, that Holocaust Remembrance Day, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, shouldn't be including everybody, should just be about the Jews, is because we are seeing a resurgence in the last few years of Nazis. Now, I know the world likes to call them neo-Nazis. They're like the Nazis. They're not actually Nazis. They're like the Nazis. But I don't like the word neo-Nazi. I never use the word neo-Nazi. I call them Nazis. If you walk like a duck and you quack like a duck, you are a duck. If these people who believe in Nazism today were given the opportunity, they would try to repeat the crimes of Germany in the 1930s and 40s. They wouldn't even think twice about building camps, about building gas chambers, and about annihilating Jews. So if these people believe in the Nazi philosophy, and if they would actually today follow through with this philosophy to kill Jews and to murder the Jewish people, why would we hide behind a neo like Nazis? No. If you want to institute the policies of the Nazis, if you want to murder the Jews, and if you want to finish the job that Hitler didn't finish, which is what they say, well, then you're a damn Nazi. Just be clear about it. We don't have to hide behind fake words. We don't have to hide behind political correctness. And Nazis today should be treated like the Nazis were treated after the war. No, I'm not saying they should be shipped off to Brazil and Argentina to be hidden for decades. No, that's not what I was referring to. They should be tried. They should be convicted of attempted genocide. If they're advocating genocide, they should be convicted of attempted genocide. Now, a lot of people have argued with me. I've made this point over the years. A lot of people have argued with me saying, Howie, these people will never have the power to do what the Nazis did. So why do you even pay attention to what they say? Why do you even acknowledge the fact that they exist? And I am sure, which is my response, which has always been my response, that the Jews of Germany in the early 1930s felt that a young corporal who wrote a book and had a coup d'etat would never follow through with his policies of murdering the Jews. Who would have thought that this loser would have gotten up and become the leader of the country and then create this thing? You never know what is going to happen next. So when my enemy comes to me and tells me, I want to kill you, I tend to believe him. And no matter how strong or how weak my enemy is, if he says, I want to kill you, I believe that he wants to kill me. Now, is Holocaust education strong enough? Do enough people know about the Holocaust? No, definitely not. And in the next segment, I want to talk about that. Because the way we see politics unfolding today in North America and around the world, the way the rhetoric is unfolding, we haven't taught enough Holocaust. We haven't taught enough about the horrors of the Holocaust. And the new generations, the younger generations, know almost nothing about it. And these commemorations, great. An Israeli leader will go and speak in Germany today. Beautiful. Glad to hear it. Glad to see it. But these speeches don't teach the future of the Holocaust. They don't teach the future generations about the horrors of the Holocaust, and we got to do that. I'm Howie Soberger. This is Political Hitman. We're live, so feel free to call in. Numbers are on the top of the page on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. You could join me in the chat room, IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Hi everyone, this is Andrea Simento from Jerusalem, inviting you to drop everything and join me on my show, Pull Up a Chair. We'll visit this week's quirky stories, meet fabulous guests, and discover my Israel. Together we'll laugh, shout, and explain the topics that make us say, hey, we've got to talk about that. So get comfortable and pull up a chair with me, Andrea Simento, every Thursday on Israel News Talk Radio.
Political Hitman.
Political Hitman right here on Israel News Talk Radio. Feel free to join me in the chat room, IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. You could call in. In North America, the number is 301-768-4841. In Israel, the number is 026500-151. Today is Holocaust Remembrance Day, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, a day put together by the United Nations and Germany to commemorate the Jews that were killed in the Holocaust and other people killed in the Holocaust. So, is Holocaust education sufficient around the world? I grew up, I'm the descendant of Holocaust survivors. And I grew up hearing stories from my grandparents about their experience in the Holocaust. It wasn't a pleasant experience, and they were very vivid in their stories. And I grew up listening to stories. When I was 15 or 16, just about 16 years old, I went on the March of the Living, and I toured the death camps and saw Auschwitz with my own eyes, saw Majdanek with my own eyes, went to the site of Treblinka, saw the Jewish ghetto, walked through Poland for a week, then we walked through Israel for a week. I had the fortune of doing that, or maybe the misfortune of doing that. And then I went and visited many Holocaust museums around the world. I worked for Steven Spielberg's Shoah project and recorded Holocaust testimonials from many different Holocaust survivors. So my life, especially my younger life, has been embedded in Holocaust education, firsthand knowledge, talking to people who were there, people who saw it with their own eyes. And so my commitment to Holocaust education is high, because I understand the horrors and the terrors and the extremes that the Holocaust presented to the people living through it. And I understand the dangers, and I understand how many people died, because I heard the stories firsthand from people who witnessed them. So I get the cruelty of Nazism. I understand the barbaric nature of Nazism. I didn't live through it, so I can't say that I have the feeling that somebody who was there has, but I have seen the feeling of people who were there. I have witnessed it. Now, watching a man in his 70s or 60s or 70s or 80s telling the story of how they were killed and their families were killed in front of them leaves an indelible mark on you. And when I went on these tours of Holocaust memorial museums around the world, I couldn't help but notice one thing. All the museums focused on was the murder of Jews. All the museums focused on were showing pictures of Jewish bodies piled up, of tractors pushing Jewish bodies into ditches and mass graves, of crematoria spitting out smoke, of people being herded into gas chambers. And this was the focus, the main focus of all the Holocaust museums. And I kept thinking, all through my entire youth, I thought, what a waste of an opportunity. While I understand that commemorating the death aspect of the Holocaust is very important, it's important to know that Jews were annihilated, that the massacre happened to Jews, that the genocide happened to Jews. Well, it's important to know that many Jews died, a third of the Jewish population of the world died. It is also very important to know that Jews survived the Holocaust, that there were many Jews who got up and fought the Nazis, that there were many organizations that were formed, underground organizations, partisan organizations, people fighting in the forest, people fighting in the cities, that went and battled against the Nazi regime. And this is not something that's focused on a lot in Holocaust education. Jews are always depicted as the weak, as the broken, as the destroyed, as the murdered. Never as the victor, always as the victim. Well, here's a proposition. And I'm telling you, I said this a few years ago on my show, and I got a call from a Holocaust survivor, or at least the son of a Holocaust survivor, who screamed at me for 3 hours telling me I was crazy, and that how dare I say this. But I'm going to repeat it again right now because I actually believe this. I think that we have been teaching the Holocaust wrong. I think that the Holocaust education that was set up, and God bless the people who set it up, because it was set up by Holocaust survivors. So God bless the people who set it up. They lived through horrors. It's very hard to criticize people who live through that kind of horror. But I think it was set up wrong. I think the focus was wrong. Instead of being the focus being the murder of Jews, which is very important to commemorate, don't get me wrong, I think the focus should have been the fact that Jews won. We won the Holocaust. We were victims during the Holocaust. We were massacred. A third of our population was killed during the Holocaust. But at the end of the day, at the end of the Holocaust, when the war ended, and the concentration camps and the death camps and the labor camps and the killing factories were shut down forever, the Jews were still around. The Nazis had failed. And I think that should have been the point of Holocaust education. That yes, we have to be vigilant against people who want to commit genocide against us. Yes, we have to remember the people who were massacred and murdered and tortured and destroyed. Yes, we must remember the way they were killed, because that was the most unique way to kill a people in the history of the world, killing factories to murder people. But at the same time, we must remember that we won, that we survived, that we're still here, that I'm talking to you right now on a Jewish radio station. We're the Nazis. They're gone. We're not. And this must be something that would, this kind of pride of winning, even though we had a lot of destruction, the pride of winning should have been the main focus, to tell our kids the Jewish people are a strong people. We're not the people of weak blood. We're not the kind, we may have been weak. We may have been murdered. There may have been Jews thrown into mass graves by tractors. But that's not who the Jewish people are. That doesn't define us. We can't be defined by the murdered Jews. We have to be defined by the Jews that survived the Holocaust, the Jews that fought the Nazis, the strong Jews, the Jews that after suffering under Nazi regime went to a barren wasteland and built the state of Israel. We have to be defined by the Jews who took on the Arab army after their families being annihilated in Europe, came home to Israel, took on the Arab armies that attacked them, fought them with pitchforks and with antiquated rifles. but fought hard and won and held on to the state of Israel. The strong Jews that put their lives forward and in danger in order to protect the Jewish people and rebuild the Jewish people after the annihilation. This is what should define Judaism. Strength, not weakness. Victory, not victimhood. I know we live in a world that ranks victimhood and says the more of a victim you are, the better you are in society. What a warped way of thinking. What a corrupt way of thinking. I would rather be associated with victors than victims. Remember your victims, but remember your victories too. And our biggest victory in recent times, the biggest Jewish victory in recent times, was the defeat of the Nazis. The survival of the genocide, the fact that we're still here and they're not. Forgetting that and not teaching our children that, not teaching our children strength. The fact that there are still Torah observant Jews. The fact that there are still Jews who follow traditions. After Nazism, after communism, the Jewish people are still here. Not focusing on that is a disservice to our children, it's a disservice to ourselves, a disservice to society. It gives the Jew hater, the Holocaust denier, as they call them, whatever the heck that means, it gives those people ammunition, it gives those people credibility when we depict ourselves as the victim. Oh, look at the crybaby Jews. Oh, look at the Jews always crying about the Holocaust, always trying to get something from the countries that they claim committed the Holocaust against them. Oh, look at those Jews, those crybabies. We're not crybabies. We're survivors. We're not only survivors, we're victors. We won. We're not crying. We're not looking for handouts. We never were. We just want to be left alone. But we haven't been left alone. And next segment, I want to talk about the kinds of attacks that we're still facing today. I'm Howie Silverman. This is Political Hitman. Feel free to call in. Numbers are on the top of the page on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
Are you interested in transforming your life, drawing closer to the Creator, and uncovering the deeper meanings and hidden treasures in the Hebrew Bible?
Then join me, Rav Yitzhak Michelson,
And me, William Hall,
on the Science of Kabbalah, where we are seeking to narrow the gap between what we understand of our physical and spiritual worlds. So make sure to tune in every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Israel time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, here on Israel News Talk Radio.
Political Hitman.
I'm Howie Silberger, your political hitman, right here on Israel News Talk Radio. Feel free to join me in the chat room, IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com, or you could call in. The numbers to call in North America, 301-768-4841. In Israel, the number is 02-650-0151. Numbers are on the top of the page on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Today is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's January 27th, International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And Holocaust Remembrance, as I said last segment, has been, in my opinion, focused on the wrong aspect of the Holocaust. First of all, we shouldn't be focused so much on the death of the Jews. We should be focused more on the survival of the Jews, the strength of the Jews. What did the Jews do after the Holocaust? How did we survive? How did we prosper after the Holocaust? And this is what we should be focusing on. The kids of today in 2021 can't really relate to the events of 1933 or 1939 or 1945. So we have to connect with the kids of today. And the way to connect to the kids today is that the Nazis are gone and we're here. We have to show them strength. We have to be strong Jews. We saw, we thought, and I'm told all the time that the annihilation of the Jews, the genocide of the Jews during the Holocaust, the organization of the Nazis, the building of the killing camps and the factories to destroy Jews, the efficiency of the murder of the Jewish people was something that was unparalleled in history and has been unparalleled since the Holocaust. And I will agree with that. It has been unparalleled, and the connection between anything and the Holocaust is a false connection. We see those connections all the time. You see, this is the problem with the kind of history that we're teaching about the Holocaust. This is the problem with this disconnect of the current generation of people and the generation that existed during Holocaust times, is that they can now feel that they can connect the Holocaust to anything. So we see comparisons to Hitler. The evilness of Hitler is unparalleled by any leader, basically in history. The man came up with an idea to build factories to kill people. Build factories, efficient factories to kill people. They were killing millions of people a day. It's mind-boggling that factories were built, buildings were built, ovens, crematorias. They were built for the specific reason of murdering of people. So comparing a guy like Donald Trump to Hitler is an insult to the victims of Hitler. Comparing a regime, calling someone a Nazi, is an insult to the memory of the victims of the Nazis. Because nobody in the world today is equivalent to the kind of evilness that Nazism was. It doesn't exist today. So making these comparisons is crazy. Now there is an exception, and I will gladly to tell you what the exception is. And I oppose, every time I see posted online, anytime I see anybody making these kind of comparisons, I'm always almost one of the first people to jump in there and say, hey, this comparison is ridiculous. We can't be comparing Donald Trump. We can't be comparing Bill Clinton. We can't compare these people to Nazis. Bibi Netanyahu, we can't compare them to Nazis. No. When I see those comparisons made, I'm the first one in there yelling, what are you, crazy? That situation isn't even remotely close. And we saw it a couple of years ago when the Democrats in the States had accused Trump of locking up or separating kids from parents at the border, immigrants, illegal immigrants, separating them at the border. And then you saw comparisons to, well, the Nazis separated children from their parents. And now look, the Donald Trump administration is separating children from their parents. What? These kind of comparisons just make me stop and blow my mind, really. And then it takes me a couple of minutes to remember that the ignorance that exists today when it comes to Holocaust education, the ignorance that exists today when it comes to any kind of historical knowledge, we've dumbed down our schools so our kids aren't getting history lessons, proper history lessons. We've dumbed down the curriculum so kids aren't learning things. And so to be able to make those connections in their mind, oh, sure, it makes sense. But when you look at the end result, the connections don't make sense. The comparisons don't make any sense. The one exception I could make to this rule that we can't compare anybody to the Nazis is Hamas. Hamas could be compared to the Nazis. Why Hamas? And not the PLO? Well, maybe the PLO too. The Arab groups opposed to Israel, the ones that were created specifically for the goal of destroying the Jewish state. The Palestinian Liberation Organization created specifically to be a thorn in the side of the Jewish state, to destroy the Jewish state internally, militarily, internally, to destroy them because the Arab armies realized they couldn't destroy them from the outside. So now they created a people, and I use people very loosely, They created a people and an organization inside Israel to destroy them. Their charter calls for the annihilation of the Jewish people in what they consider Palestine. Hamas goes a step further. Hamas calls for the annihilation of the Jewish people anywhere in the world. All Jews have to be killed. And like I said before, if we are going to listen to people saying, let's annihilate the Jews, we should believe that this is their goal. We should not be negotiating with people who want to kill the Jews. There should be no negotiations with people who insist that murdering Jews is an appropriate response to any political problem that they have with the Jewish people. They shouldn't be taken seriously, but they are taken seriously. And the media gives them the platform to express their hate towards the Jewish people. And the education, once again, we come to the point where people are not educated, and the lack of education and the lack of knowledge of the true realities of the Middle East, the true realities of international law in Israel, the true realities of everything concerning Israel is lost on a generation of people. They're not learning it. Nobody's teaching it to them. Therefore, when somebody gets up and says, let's boycott Israel, another technique to try to destroy Israel from the inside out, when they realize the PLO didn't work and Hamas didn't work and Hezbollah didn't work, let's try it again and create the BDS movement to destroy Israel from the inside out. So another movement to destroy Israel, I would also classify them as the modern day Nazis. Because all these movements have the same goal. The founder of BDS, Omar Barghouti, he said it very clearly. No Palestinian, especially no sellout, unless they're a sellout Palestinian, would ever accept a Jewish state in the Middle East. He said it clearly. It's on video. The goals of the BDS are very clear. Destroy the Jewish state. Their goals, Hamas's goals, the PLO's goals, are exactly the same as the Nazis' goals. And if they had the resources and they had the power, they would commit the same genocide that the Nazis did. Because you got to remember that the Arab groups that formed the PLO, the Arab groups that formed Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and countless other groups that exist in order to destroy the state of Israel. You have to remember that the forefathers of these groups, the people who founded these groups, were trained by the Nazis. They modeled themselves after the Nazis. You watch them march down the street, and you watch a Nazi march, it's the exact same thing. They model themselves after Nazism. You have to remember that Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who led the Arab armies in the 1930s and 40s in the Middle East, was an ally to Hitler, was a friend and an ally to Hitler. He learned a lot from the Hitler regime. In fact, he even went to Croatia to help murder Jews. History that's lost, that nobody ever talks about, but that we have to remember, and should all be included in the history of the Holocaust. Because the Holocaust did not end in 1945. The murder of the Jews ended. The Nazism ended in 1945. But as long as Nazi-type groups still exist, as long as people are freely allowed to get up and call for the annihilation of the Jewish people like Iran does all the time, as long as that exists, Nazism still exists in the world. And still must be fought. And Jews still must be strong to fight up and stand up against the Nazis. Whether they be the Iranians, the Palestinians, the Hamasians, or any other group that gets up and says, let's annihilate the Jews. Sitting on our laurels and saying, look, we can't take them seriously, and playing with political correctness is not going to save the people. I didn't even talk about assimilation today. Another thing we have to fight. We'll get to that in another show. That's it. That's all I have to say. Let's remember the strength of the Jewish people. Let's remember that we're strong. I'm Howie Silberger. This is Political Hitman. I'll see you again next week, right here on Israel News Talk Radio.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
If you're hearing this message, everyone else can too. Advertise with Israel News Talk Radio and get your message out to people. We'll build a personalized package for you. Contact advertising at israelnewstalkradio.com.
Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Hey, this is Jake in Anchorage, Alaska, and I love listening to all the super interesting interviews and up-to-date information on what's happening in Israel.
Hello, this is Anna King, originally from London, now living in Israel. And what can I say? Israel News Talk Radio is my cup of tea.
My name is Bhaskar. I'm from India, and I love listening because you get to know the truth and wonderful voices from this lovely country.
Mom! Okay, wait a minute. Hi, this is Chava Dax, and I'm calling for the rolling hills of Malaya Dumim, just north of Jerusalem. I always listen to Israel News Talk Radio to get all the latest news and commentary and to keep me up to date every day.
This is Sarah Dax from Malaya Dumim, and I'm 12. I wish Israel News Talk Radio was boring so my mom wouldn't listen to it all the time. Mom!
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.